Hello and welcome, and thank you for being here. My name is Danielle Forrest. I'm an alien romance author and YouTuber, and today I'm going to be reading from episode 15 of my alien romance serial, Fated Mates the Drakoan, titled Invasion of Privacy. So let's get started. All right, comfortable. Jess woke up feeling refreshed, but as if something was missing. She had the impulse to reach behind her, as if she expected someone to be there. But when was the last time she'd slept next to someone? Her mind immediately popped up an image of Davin, and she sat up quickly, her blankets dropping around her waist. The room was full of morning light, and she could hear her friends moving around in other portions of the house. That should have been all that should have all been perfectly normal and familiar, but nothing felt familiar today. Everything felt different, almost wrong. She thought of Davin, and she wished she'd been able to stay with him, but she understood why he'd suggested she leave. He needed to focus. He had a job to do. She didn't. Yet still, the yearning was there. The need was there. She glanced out her window, but being on the second floor, all she could see were branches and one edge of the neighbor's house. He's not there, she told herself. But she couldn't quite ignore her instincts. They were lying to her, of course. She knew that. But she couldn't help feeling that if she were to just get up and look down, Davin would be there. Don't be stupid. He's back at the shuttle. He can't be outside. He promised. No, that was just wishful thinking. And as she got out of bed, she forced herself not to look out and down at the space below her window. Instead, she went through the motions, half-heartedly throwing on clothes and tossing her hair back into a ponytail without looking. She barely took in her surroundings as she stepped out into the hall and trudged downstairs. She was tensing slightly as she made her way deeper into the shared spaces of the house, even less motivated to interact with someone than she'd been to get dressed. Unfortunately, in a house with 5 other people, avoiding them was essentially impossible. There was always someone underfoot. "Morning, Jess," Inez said quietly as they crossed paths at the base of the stairs. Jess sighed. Thank God for small favors. Of all the people to bump into this morning, Inez was probably the best. She was quiet and good at reading a person's mood. You could always rely on her to give you what you needed, whether it was a thoughtful comment, a compassionate ear, or plenty of space. Jess nodded and moved on, yearning for a quiet spot to sit and think. Then maybe you should have stayed in your room. She frowned as she slipped into the empty living room. Sure, she could have stayed in her bedroom, but then the impulse to think of Davin or look out the window would have plagued her constantly. Even now, the impulse remained, but it was a little easier to control here. And yet, there were reminders here too. This was the room where she'd seen him yesterday. She looked out the window, imagining his form in the late afternoon rays. The lighting was all wrong, which helped, but his memory was like a ghost in her mind. Never quite there, but never quite leaving either. What am I going to do? She whispered to herself. It didn't seem healthy the way she couldn't seem to stop thinking about him. But he'd talked about mates, about how it was instinctual, biological. Clearly that was happening here, because she really didn't know him from Adam. And she knew full well that biology could be a powerful beast. She'd known plenty of people with other neurotypes, had seen how it affected them. But her own brain had always been consistently dependable. She'd never needed to pay much attention to it. She'd never before experienced the feeling of not being fully in control of her own mind and body. It was unnerving, and she didn't like it. But it didn't matter what she liked or didn't like. She couldn't change how she felt, or how her mind and body seemed to be working right now. Even when she closed her eyes and tried to clear her mind, a practice she'd been doing all her life, thoughts of Davin popped up unbidden again and again. And it wasn't like the normal thoughts she was used to. Usually she could imagine a river in her mind and just watch as the thoughts rolled on down the river and out of sight. But thoughts of Davin were like a siege. They ignored the river, rushing forward and demanding to be seen, to be heard. They ignored all attempts to walk away or move on. This is definitely not healthy, she muttered under her breath. Then a commotion broke out in another portion of the house, and she jerked her eyes open, her entire body tensing in anticipation. Guys? She said as she leaned forward in her seat. What's going on? Then Amanda rushed into the doorway. Alarmed, Jess jumped to her feet and rushed to her side. Amanda, what's wrong? Her face was ashen, her eyes wide. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water for a few moments before she spoke. Inez saw an alien lurking in the yard. It felt like the moment they'd all been fearing since the announcement that an alien military fleet had reached Earth. But Jess refused to let her fear get the better of her. Maybe it's not an alien. Maybe Inez didn't get a good look. Where? Jess said, calling her to action. Outside her room, she stuttered, her hands fluttering up and over her mouth. Jess nodded, awkwardly wondering if she should offer comfort, but then decided investigating was the more practical choice. Come on, she urged Amanda forward. Let's go figure this out. Hopefully someone else could look after Amanda while she got to the bottom of this. It's probably nothing, she said in a half-hearted gesture of comfort. But it didn't feel like nothing. Her adrenaline was surging, and Amanda's trudging pace was setting her teeth on edge. She wanted to rush to the back of the house and demand someone explain what they'd seen, but she couldn't do that with Amanda holding her back. So instead, possibilities flooded her mind. At first, she thought it could be Davin or someone on his team, but she easily dismissed that. He'd promised he wouldn't, and she couldn't imagine Van showing up unless Davin had broken his promise. She didn't know the rest of the team, but she had to believe they were just as reliable as Van. None of them had any reason to lurk outside Inez's window. Unfortunately, the other options she was coming up with weren't anywhere near as appealing. Enemy aliens, creeps, peeping toms, looters, thieves. As she made her way to her room, she got to where she was almost hoping it was Davin and his team, because nothing else she was coming up with had anywhere near as good an outcome. When they finally reached the room, Melissa was cradling Inez and trying and failing to calm her down while glaring at Tom and Scotty, who were currently arguing. They were the ones creating the commotion. They were in each other's faces, leaning in and looking ready to come to blows. Hey, knock it off, Jess snapped, forgetting about Amanda for a moment as she rushed across the room and pushed the two men apart. What the fuck, dudes? Tom crossed his arms, coolly glaring at Scotty, while Scotty pouted and looked to Jess for validation. Oh, don't even start. I have no idea what you two are fighting about. Tom is being unreasonable. She frowned at Scotty, suspecting the reverse was probably true. Tom was reasonable to a fault. She couldn't imagine him being the unreasonable one. Scotty, on the other hand, occasionally got riled up and forgot to listen. It was usually endearing, but sometimes it caused trouble. Tom? I suggested we stay inside, away from the windows. It is unlikely that anyone outside would be targeting us specifically. So the smartest choice would be to make us as small a target as possible. Scotty scoffed. Of course you'd say that. We need to protect our home, damn it. He stomped his foot and renewed his glare. Not be a coward. Scotty, enough. It's not cowardly to avoid a conflict. I think you've been playing too many video games again. I haven't been playing any video games. Well, then maybe you're going through withdrawal, but my point still stands. This isn't a game. We don't have to act like murder hobos here. Though I do think we should know what we're dealing with. Otherwise, we're just going to be on edge indefinitely. We need to know if it's a threat, and we need to know when they leave. I suggest we find a conspicuous window and watch. Inconspicuous window. Scotty huffed, but then nodded. Excellent strategy, Tom said as he dropped his arms to his sides. We might get a better view and be less likely to be seen on the second floor. Jess sighed. Fine, we can use my room. She turned on her heel and left. A loud din followed her up the stairs, and when she turned around, she found the entire household entering her bedroom. She shook her head, then focused on the window she'd been avoiding only a short while ago. The blinds were down, and she was careful not to move any of them as she peeked out. It was hard to see through the slats, but she could see the fence, the base of a tree, and lots of grass. No person at first, though. She turned, facing the crowd. Melissa, Inez, and Amanda were near the doorway, and with Melissa wrapping an arm around the other two women supportively. She could see that Melissa wanted nothing to do with comforting the two, but felt like she needed to. Yearning filled her eyes as she watched Jess, Tom, and Scotty crowd around the window. By the tree, Inez whispered, barely audible. Jess nodded, then turned back around, focusing in on the tree. Sorry about the dog. Hey. Shh. Hopefully she'll stop. Jess nodded, then turned back around, focusing in on the tree. At first she saw nothing. No movement, just a quiet side yard in the quiet morning hours. There was no one visible at all. But then she started noticing the shadows and spotted one that didn't fit. It was long and skinny. At first, she thought it was a branch, but the movement wasn't right. Too sinuous, too curvy. Motherfucker, she said as she pushed back from the window. Jess? Someone asked. But she wasn't paying attention anymore. I'm gonna kill him. She stormed out of the room, ran down the stairs, and threw open the front door, half expecting the doorknob to embed itself in the siding as she ran across the grass, then turned as she hit the corner. She spotted him immediately. He was behind the tree, unmistakable, his long tail waving back and forth and giving him away. You motherfucker! You lied! She was on him in a blink. She didn't even remember the intervening distance. One moment she spotted him, and the next she was swinging. All right. Well, that's it for episode 15. I hope that was a sufficient cliffhanger to drive you insane. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked, consider giving it a like, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the bell if that's something that you're into. You can find links down in the video's description for how to connect with me and my reading online. Interstellar crew members on Ream can get up to episode 20 at the moment of this video, versus it's episode 15 everywhere else. And followers can get over there can get up to episode 16. So they get a little bit early just for following me on Ream. Anyway, like I said, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm going to go nurse my poor hands that I had a little bit of an accident yesterday. Fortunately, it does seem to be doing pretty good. I kept a band-aid on it, but good lord, did this sucker bleed. Like, look at this thing. It doesn't look very bad right now, but that thing bled like crazy. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Thank you for watching. If you're watching this on replay, I'm gonna try to remember to put up some cards for other videos for you to watch on the screen, and I will see you next time. I'm gonna be my next live stream is tomorrow at 12:30 Eastern, where I'm gonna be doing a productivity live stream. And I'm thinking I might do a kind of month in review thing where I'm gonna go through all the books I read in the last month. Next week, I'm thinking about doing that. Let me know in the comments or if you think that's a good idea.